Imagine waking up every day feeling energized, less drained, and unstoppable, as if life is only recharging you and not draining your soul. It sounds too good to be true, right? But what if it's not? I mean, what would your week look like? What would your month look like? What would your year look like? What are some things that you would be able to successfully do, or things that you would start to attract? Today, I'm going to teach you guys how to feel less drained and more energized daily. Hey guys, if you're new to this channel, my name is Coach Royce. I've been a trainer for over a decade. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a person that's always trying to get super fit and super healthy. And when you're wearing all of those hats, it can be extremely draining. And if you don't have systems and methods to fill your cup and to fill your energy, you're just left into this like nothingness, into this place where you just feel like you're burnt to a crisp. So if you feel like you're at a spot where you just feel hopeless and just extremely drained, I understand you. And this particular concept that I'm teaching really stemmed from that place. So when I hit that rock bottom, that's when I decided to really seek help. And I hired my first of many coaches. And hiring your first coach is not a cheap thing. You know, it's an expensive investment for sure. But not having this tool, I can't even put a monetary thing on it. So I'm gonna be teaching you guys this concept that my coach gave me when I was at that rock bottom. And I hope it can serve you today and hopefully get you into a place where you don't feel hopeless, you don't feel drained, and potentially just more calm, maybe more hopeful, and maybe get to a point where you're so jacked up and energized that you're just out there teaching people you'll never see again. So let's get after it. Here we go. All right, step one is to set up your environment. And the thing that we're doing is going to take a lot of reflection and a lot of deep work. So you want to dedicate a place where you can do this type of work, somewhere quiet, somewhere where there's not going to be a lot of distraction. Another thing to keep in mind is we're going through this practice in like 15 to 20 minutes. However, normally this work takes about an hour. So what you can do as you're going through the steps is to just do the steps, pause it so you can reflect, you can write things down, and then just unpause and just keep going through. Or what you can do is just listen to the whole thing one time and then go back and then fill in how you would approach this particular thing that we're about to go through. Another thing that I highly recommend is grabbing yourself a piece of paper and a pen to do this instead of just typing it in. I feel like it's much more impactful when we're doing things in analog format. It's just been a game changer when I approached it that way. Now that you're in a quiet place where you're not gonna get distracted, you have your pen, you have your paper, we could dive into the second step to this, which is just writing down 10 people that you admire. So list out 1 to 10 and list out as many people that's in your head that had massive impacts in your life or massive influence in your life. Those people that you admire can be people like family, friends, it can be athletes, authors, speakers, it could even be fictional heroes. Whoever that's in your mind and who maybe someone that you're following a reasonable amount of time or a decent amount of time, write those names down. For this particular practice, I'm gonna be showing you mine currently. It's shifted throughout the years, but at least will give you some context on what types of people you can write on this list. It's all gonna make sense here shortly, but just go ahead and do that first. Now, step 3 is to ask yourself, what are their personality traits? When you're looking at their name, there's gonna be one particular trait that highlighted in your mind, and you wanna write that particular trait down. Number 2, you wanna almost anchor that trait with a reason. And this part is important because it gives you more an in-depth look into yourself of why these traits are so valuable for you. I'm gonna give you some of these examples so you can have some context of what I'm talking about. All right, the first person on this list, guys, is my mom. And one of the traits that she has that really screams out at me is how organized she was. In fact, a lot of times, my house was always clean. The dishes were clean, the living room was always clean. When my room was dirty, she would clean it, or I had to clean it. Even the fridge was clean. Everything was always neat and organized. So that is a massive trait that I really value, especially now. Another person on this list, for example, is James Lawrence. And if you guys are not familiar with James Lawrence, he's the guy that did 50 triathlons in 50 days in 50 different states. He also done it 100 days straight, and all in the same place, not different areas. One of the traits that I really value James Lawrence is his resiliency. And all throughout those crazy journeys, he's had ups and downs. And I just love it when people are able to fall and get back into their feet. Something about that really pulls me, and I really value that amongst people. My last example on this list is actually a fictitious hero. It's an anime character. And some of your heroes might not be actual people at all. They can be superheroes. Deku, which is on my list, is actually a kid that's in this world full of heroes, and they called them quirks. However, Deku was quirkless. A cool thing about Deku was he was a fan of superheroes. He loved all the superheroes. Unfortunately, he didn't have any, which was super sad. Along the storyline, he meets a guy that is the strongest hero of them all. And this strong hero was able to give his powers and hand it over to him. So he gets one of the strongest powers ever. However, in this story, he's unable to completely utilize all of the power because his body hasn't completely adapted to that level of power. So when he would use the power, he would hurt himself. Now, I share this story with you guys because the people that you admire are essentially handing off their powers to you. And as we continue our life and our experiences, and as we practice some of the teachings that they teach us, we get stronger, both physically, mentally, and spiritually. All right, step 4 to this practice is to ask yourself how many of these people that you admire actually have these traits. And you're gonna notice a few things. One, you're gonna notice that a lot of the people that you admire carry a lot of those traits, and then some of them may not have all of those traits as well, which leads us to step number 5, which is asking yourself, what are the top 5 traits? Now, my top 5 traits are hardworking, student of the game, resilient, organized, and leadership. And here's what's really cool about this concept, guys. I don't know who I'm speaking with behind this lens, but if I can guess, the 5 words that you wrote down for yourself is a very accurate representation of who you are. And if you don't believe me, ask someone really close to you and just ask them the question, am I these 5 words? And most of the time, especially if you're listening to this, most likely those 5 words are going to be you. However, if it's not, it may be the reason why you feel lost, or you feel disconnected, or you're having this like internal crisis of not knowing who you are. That's what's really a huge epiphany when I was doing this particular work. All right, guys, we're not done yet. Step number 6 is asking yourself, what are your cup fillers? Now, when I'm talking about cup fillers, these are gonna be things that energize you. These are gonna be things that jazz you up, or when you're done doing it, you just feel really good. Some examples for me are workouts, like hard workouts, learning, doing Legos, which is weird. Now, it'll make sense here in a sec. A clean, simple room, coffee with friends. Those are gonna be some of the things that really just liven me up. Now, what's cool about this little list and these little activities is it has a positive influence in my macro traits. For example, hard workouts feeds my hardworking trait. Learning feeds my student of the game trait. Doing Legos, which is really weird, this is new to me, but it actually feeds my trait of feeling organized, because if you've ever done Legos, there's these like little step things and you have to organize it. It's weirdly peaceful, it's weirdly calming for me. And another thing is coffee with my friends. And most of my friends are entrepreneurs or leaders of some type, but for the most part, friends that actually have a lot of these traits, and I have inclination to almost hang out with them more because of those traits. All right, step number 7 is the opposite side of this thing, which is listing out your cup drainers. And I want you to just list out 5. So these are gonna be activities that you do on a daily or weekly or monthly basis that by the end of it, you just feel like you're just drained or your soul just like left your body after doing it. Examples for me is like a messy house or people not growing or traffic. Everyone hates traffic. Or 4, people complaining or financials. What are the things that you do on a daily or weekly basis that by the time you're done with it, you just feel like you have nothing left to give? List those things out. Once you compile your cup drainers and your cup fillers, we move on to step number 8 to this, which is asking yourself, what is my ratio? So what I mean by that is asking yourself, how many times do I do these activities on a weekly basis? For example, I like to work out every single day, so I put 7x by that. I like to learn every day, so I put 7x by that. I do Legos once a week with my son, which is new, so I put 1x by that. I spend about 5 days a week in a clean environment, so I put 5x by that. And I also try to meet up with a good friend at least once a week, do some type of coffee thing, so I put 1x by that. On the drainers end, you want to do the same thing. A messy house, I spend about once a week in a messy house, especially if you have a kiddo. It's always going to be a little messy for sure. The next thing is people not growing. Unfortunately, there are people around me that don't want to grow all the time, so I spend maybe three times per week I'm spending with that type of people. Traffic, for sure. There's a bypass by my house 3 times a week, constantly gets cluttered. And people complaining, that's normally a decent amount too, especially when you're in the world of people trying to get healthy. That's just a byproduct of what you have to deal with. So 3 times a week. And then the financial stuff, we've talked about that in previous episodes. It's not my forte. It's a normally cup drainer for me. I'm gonna put 3x by that. Once you have those numbers listed out and labeled, you just wanna add them. So on the cup drainers end, I have 13 total. And then on the cup fillers end, I have 21 total. And it's just really nice to see how many things that I'm doing to energize my soul and then how many things that are just taking away from my soul, which is really cool number to start to look at. Now that you have your ratio, we move on to step 9 of this, which is asking yourself, what should I do? And you're gonna be in one of 2 buckets. One, you're gonna be in a bucket where you feel energized, and you're probably energized because your cup filler side is a lot higher than your cup draining side. Some of the things that you can do to even buff this up and make yourself a lot more energized is just to continue to make sure that your cup fillers are scheduled in your calendar. Another thing is you can just see if you can increase some of those things that you already like to do. So for me, example, I could probably do more Legos. I could probably do more coffee with my friends. Those are just some things that I can do. Another thing that I can do is I can reduce some of the cup drainer end by diminishing some. Like, could I spend less time with people that are complaining and not growing? Probably. Or maybe I can take a different alternate route that doesn't have a lot of traffic. I could possibly do that. So those are some things that I can diminish. Another thing that I would just side note is just to observe how you are responding to some of those drainer activities. It's really cool how you approach those, especially when you're coming from a place of being full and your filler side is just overwhelmingly a lot more. On the other side of the coin, you might be in the category of feeling drained or maybe even depressed. And chances are your cup drainers are just significantly higher than the cup filling end. So one of the things that you can do is just to add some things on the cup filler side, or maybe just increase the frequency by a substantial amount. If you're only doing it 1, maybe even 0 times, what would happen if I did it 3 times per week? Another thing that you can do is you can experiment with activities that influence one of your macro traits. So for example, if hardworking is a trait like for you, maybe including hard workouts. Maybe calming or peaceful is one of your traits. Maybe I should add meditation 1 times, 2 times, 3 times a week, and just build that cup filling end over the course of the month. And when you start to do that, your week will start to look different. Your energy will start to look different. Instead of feeling drained, maybe you feel like more at peace, and then all of a sudden you'll get more excited, and so on and so forth. Another thing you can do on if you're feeling pretty drained is just to label some of the things that you can and can't control on that drainer end. I feel like a lot of times we spend a lot of energy trying to control things we can't control. Like for instance, I can't necessarily control traffic, but what I can control is I can control the roads that I decide to take. Or we're trying to control people that are not growing. I can't control what they do, but what I can control is maybe spend time with other people that are growing instead of not growing. After doing this practice over the course of 5+ years, I've learned a lot of things. One, I've learned that happiness and feeling energized can actually be intentional. It could be purpose. And another thing that I also learned is when your cup is full, you're able to give to a lot more people, even to the people that are draining you. One of the final lessons doing this practice is realizing that not everything on the drainer end is worth removing or diminishing. There's this story of a monk that would go down the hill to refill his water every day, and he had these 2 buckets of water. However, one of the buckets had holes in it. So by the time he got back up to his home, that bucket would be empty. And he would do this for years until one of the monks asked him, he was like, hey, why don't you just patch up that hole so you can have 2 buckets of water that are full? And the monk smiled at him and he said, but who would water these beautiful flowers that are on the path? And that story really sums up what this really is all about. Not everything in your life is worth diminishing, because sometimes when you're coming in with a full cup, you're able to water those areas that need you, that need your energy. Sometimes I find myself completely full and I am with the people that are not growing and I'm able to help them in some way. And they are a representation of those flowers. They are a representation of beauty emerging from just some of your mess ups and mistakes. That story just pretty much sums up what this is. Guys, if you like this episode, we did a episode on how to calendar for less stress. I talked about it briefly on calendaring your cup fillers. So if you guys want to know how to do that, I'll put a link up here. It's going to be here. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.